Today, Senate Republicans are still working in good faith on border policy changes that will allow the Senate to pass a national security supplemental. I'm hopeful that Democrats, both here and at the White House, are beginning to recognize how committed we are to addressing the crisis at our southern border. I'm hopeful that we can reach an agreement and address two national security priorities. Meanwhile, the challenges we're facing at home and abroad are not solving themselves. As of today, U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria have faced at least 92 attacks from Iran-backed terrorists since October, including just last week against the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Meanwhile, Iran's Houthi proxies are escalating their threats against shipping vessels in one of the busiest checkpoints of international maritime commerce. Iraq and its terrorist network are not deterred. They believe they can try to kill Americans with impunity. And yet last week, leading Senate Democrats joined a failed effort to withdraw America's presence in Syria. 3 members of the Democratic caucus leadership cast votes to retreat in the face of an emboldened terrorist threat. So did the chair of the Foreign Relations Subcommittee that deals with the Middle East. It's time for our colleagues to get serious about the threats we face. Fortunately, the Senate is on track to pass the long-awaited National Defense Authorization Act. I'm grateful to Ranking Member Wicker and Chairman Reid for the extensive work required to bring this must-pass legislation across the goal line. This year, the Armed Services Committee considered 445 amendments, and another 121 were adopted here on the floor. And thanks to the dedicated efforts of many of our colleagues on this side of the aisle, the bill they produced asserts the Senate's priorities on a host of national security issues where the Biden administration's approach continued to fall short. This year's NDAA recognizes the need to strengthen America's position in strategic competition with China through targeted improvements in critical capabilities from long-range fires and anti-ship weapons to modernizing our nuclear triad. I'll authorize further investments in the defense industrial base and expand efficiency and accountability of the lethal assistance degrading Russia's military in Ukraine. It'll turbocharge cooperation with Israel on future missile defense technologies and ensure our closest ally in the Middle East can access the U.S. capabilities it needs when it needs them. It'll give America's men and women in uniform a pay raise. It'll focus the Pentagon more squarely on tackling national security challenges instead of creating new ones with partisan social policies. And in my home state of Kentucky, it'll advance important initiatives to expand production at Bluegrass Army Depot and reduce U.S. reliance on competitors for materials critical to our defense. Of course, Congress can't fix the Biden administration's weakness on the world stage by ourselves. We can equip a global superpower, but we still need a commander-in-chief who recognizes that he's leading one. President Biden should be focused on restoring real deterrence against Iran-backed terrorists, not interfering with the internal politics of the Democratic ally they're attacking. Israel is a modern, mature, and independent democracy. I imagine that neither Israel's leaders nor its citizens appreciate President Biden's punditry to Democratic donors about their wartime coalition government. In fact, foreign influence in our own politics used to be something Washington Democrats loved to condemn. So I would recommend that the President focus on the task at hand, imposing meaningful consequences in Iran and giving Israel the time, the space, and the support it needs to defeat Hamas. This week, the Senate will move the National Defense Authorization Act one step closer to becoming law. I hope that will mark a first step toward giving the national security challenges America faces the urgent attention they require. But it will still fall to Congress to pass supplemental national security appropriations and a full-year defense funding to ensure the investments we authorize this week deliver real progress in making America stronger and more secure.